Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Acts, chapter 7, verses 1 through 16. Now, Stephen, who was called up to be one of the deacons, has gone off on a preaching tour and with a group of Greek Jews who are upset because he is confounding them with the preaching of the gospel. So they drag him. They seize him and drag him before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council. They want him charged. And they're accusing him of blasphemy. And the high priest asks, are these charges true? To which he's going to say no in his own way. He begins to tell the story. He says, the God of glory, he called our ancestor Abraham way back when he was still sitting outside of Mesopotamia. And the Lord said to him, leave and go, and I will take you to a place I will show you. Now that's sort of a stretch for God to say, I want you to leave. I want you to get off on a journey, and I'm going to show you where I'm going to take you. And the Lord is always calling us by faith into an adventure. You are called by faith into an adventure to follow Jesus. And so he goes on to say, so he left that place. He goes to Haran, and he stays there for a long, long time until after his father dies. And then the Lord said to him, okay, time to go again. And he says, I'm going to lead you to a place where you will have no land. And in fact, you won't even have a place to put your foot. But one day, your descendants will. And Stephen points out this is hilarious because he doesn't even have a single child at this point in time. But God is making this promise that Abraham will become a great nation. And so he gives him the covenant, the promise. And just as God gave a covenant of circumcision to Abraham, God has given you a covenant, a promise through baptism in Christ Jesus. And he says to them that God gave him that promise. And then he had Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob had his sons. And those sons, though, there was 12 of them, and they hated the youngest, Joseph. And yet God is making his promise through Joseph. And what happens to Joseph? Joseph is thrown in a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery. He's enslaved. He ends up in prison. And yet through all of these struggles, God uses them to raise up a man after God's heart who obeys God and will end up being second in command to Pharaoh. And what that does is that it means then that when there's a famine in the land, Jacob and his sons will have food to eat. He provides for them. And after this, all of them go to live in Egypt. And what the point that Stephen is making is that God leads us through different circumstances. He leads us through a faith adventure, and that unsettles our lives. And the question for us is, will we allow ourselves to be unsettled by Jesus? Will we allow ourselves for God to take us in new directions? The God that you know is a God of promises, a God who keeps his promises, and a God who is leading you into the future. That is the God who raised Jesus Christ from the dead, and that's our hope. Well, thanks, my friends. Have a blessed day.